What if prayer was more than words? What if it was the key to real connection with God? Jesus didn't just tell us to pray, he showed us how.
Well, what is up, everybody? My name is Aric Wade. I am the student minister at the Loogootee campus, and for all the Jasper folks here, I need you to know this. I love hanging out with you guys. I mean that. This is truly one of my favorite things. I enjoy being able to come and visit you guys. I enjoy being at CIY. I enjoy seeing you guys at camp. All of those things are true. I look forward to being here with you guys every single chance that I can. So, if you haven't seen me, come talk to me. I like to talk a lot, okay? I'm also really sarcastic, so if you're like, man, he's lying, I'm not. I actually really enjoy talking to you guys. I love you guys. For my Loogootee peeps, I love you guys. You guys are obviously paying attention because you love me. Hey, you guys, cannot wait to be back with you. Love you guys. Tell City, I enjoyed being at the worship night. It was so cool to be able to see you guys at your own home campus, to be able to worship alongside of you. And that is what I look forward to every time we go to CIY, every single time we go to camp, is being able to be the body of Christ with those that I don't see all of the time. But here's the deal. Last week, we started a new sermon series. It's called Living Amen, okay? And so this whole entire goal of this sermon series was this one simple thing. We're going to talk about prayer, and we're going to instill prayer, but we're going to do it using the Lord's own words, because it's really easy for us to hear a message and for the preacher to get up on stage and to preach something and us to go, I want to hear it from Jesus himself. Well, that's fantastic. You get to, okay? So, yes, and last week we talked about the Lord's Prayer. I think every single one of you have either recited it or heard it, or you've at least heard mentions of it as you go out and about, or as you're at school, or whether you're watching a movie, whatever it is, you guys have probably heard the Lord's Prayer. It's the most famous prayer in the whole of our Bibles. That remains true. That is unchanged. But tonight, we get to focus on another prayer of Jesus's, and I would argue it has greater implications than the Lord's Prayer, meaning that if we apply it correctly, I think it affects our lives lived out in a greater way than just studying the Lord's Prayer. So as we flip to this part of our Bibles, okay, if you have one, go ahead and get it out. If you have your phone, don't open it, just find a physical Bible. But here's the really cool thing. As you guys flip to Mark 14, okay, verse 32, I'm going to give you some context as to what's happening here. Because as we know, we need to know what's happening in our Bible before we just read a verse and go with it. Okay, so a little context. Jesus and his disciples have been walking around and they've been preaching for 3 years at this point. Jesus is 33 years old, and the crazy thing about it is Jesus' ministry is almost over. Okay, Jesus has done all of the miracles. Jesus has walked around, he's performed miracles, he's preached, he's taught, he's healed people, he's fed 5,000 people, he has walked on water, and he has called Peter to walk on water with him. He has done all of these things, and yet at this moment, our story is taking place literally minutes after the Last Supper. Okay, so Jesus calls his disciples to him, and they go into a room, and they sit down, and they take communion with one another, and Jesus leaving that area with his disciples is where we are going to pick up. And there's something really cool that happens here. The last verse before 32, 31, we get this interesting interaction where Jesus talks to his disciples and he says, I am going to be betrayed and I am going to be crucified. And each and every one of his disciples looks at him and they say, no, you are not. And if you are, we won't leave you. No, we'll be with you through every single moment. See, if you're going to be crucified, we're going to be crucified with you. And the really cool part about that is everything the disciples say is wrong. Every single thing. Jesus says, I'm going to be crucified, and they say, surely you won't. They're wrong. Jesus says, you guys will abandon me, including Peter. Peter, you will deny me 3 times. And all of the disciples say, we would never leave you. They're wrong. They're going to. They're going to abandon Jesus at his worst time. And Jesus knows that. Jesus knows every single part of this story, even up to the point where we see here. So let's go ahead and look at verse 32. Okay, Mark 14, verse 32. It says this: they went to the olive grove called Gethsemane, and Jesus said, sit here while I go and pray. He took Peter, James, and John with him, and he became deeply troubled and distressed. He told them, my soul is crushed with grief to the point of death. Stay here and keep watch with me. Jesus' command is pretty simple. He takes a couple of his disciples with him and he says, hey, I want you guys to walk just a little bit further, okay? It's late at night, and so the rest of his disciples are probably sleeping. They're probably camping out. They're probably making camp in this garden. And so Jesus walks them into a garden. Gethsemane just simply means wine press, oil press, okay? So this is where they're pressing olives. Jesus walks them into a garden, an olive garden, if you will, except for the fact there's probably not endless breadsticks or endless salad or endless soups. That's unfortunate, okay? Let's just be honest. It is. But here's the deal. Jesus walks them into this garden, and he grabs a handful of them, and he says, let's go a little further. And I am so distraught that I am going to sit down and pray, and as I sit down and pray, I need you to stay and watch for me. And the really cool thing is Jesus doesn't just say, stay and watch for me. He says, I need you to stay and keep watch with me. And so this sets our scene. This sets our scene. Jesus knows exactly what is to happen. Jesus knows that in a few moments he will be arrested. He knows that he will be betrayed. He knows that he will be crucified. And the crazy thing is that we have a historian from Roman society who says that crucifixion is so bad. It is so bad that the mere utterance of it can make people vomit. It shouldn't even be on your lips. It is such a horrible word. And Christ knows that he is about to bear the weight of it. I love the way that it's described here. He says this, my soul is crushed with grief to the point of death. He says, I bear a burden that weighs on me so much that I feel as if I could die. Here's my question for you guys starting out. Real simple question. How many of you guys have been in a big situation? Now, here's the deal. I'm going to need you guys to raise your hands here. Jasper, don't let me down. Loogootee and Tell City, it's going to be embarrassing either way. I'm on the screen. I'm asking you to raise your hand. I'm raising my hand on the stage. It's embarrassing for all of us. Okay, but here's the deal. I am asking you guys to be honest. I want you to be honest with me, and I want you to be honest with those that are sitting next to you. And here's the crazy thing. If I ask you anything and you're not comfortable sharing it, you don't have to raise your hand. But if you're comfortable sharing it, I ask you, because I'm going to be honest with you, to raise your hand. So, how many of you guys have faced a big moment in your life? Fantastic. For some of us, that event may have been something like the big game. Okay, now when I say big game, I played tennis. I also played golf, if you call it playing golf. I did, tennis and golf. I ran track for a little while, but here's the crazy thing. When I was playing tennis, I knew who our rivals were. I knew who our sectional partners were. And so every single time we would play these people, that was like the biggest game aside from sectional. How many of you guys have experienced that feeling? The game is coming up. It's either your rival or it's the final for the title or whatever it is. You're in a tournament. This is the game that makes it or breaks it. How many of you guys have been there before? Awesome. For the rest of us, hopefully this doubles up, okay, for all of us athletes in here. How many of us have found ourselves at school and it is that big project? okay? Like for some of us, this is holding our A, okay? And for others of us, this is like the F or the D decider here, you know what I mean? Like if we get a good grade on it, we survive. If we get a bad grade on it, we fail miserably. It's embarrassing. Okay, it's that presentation on things that you actually have no idea what you're talking about. Man, you were Googling it like 10 minutes before you got up there. Okay, you got the note cards written out. You're going to hide them in your pocket. You know, absolutely. How many of you guys have been there? Your whole semester has pointed to this moment. Yeah, I get that. Or how about this? For our sophomores and our seniors, if this applies to you, raise your hand if this is true. If it doesn't, that's okay. How many of you guys, adults included, how many of you guys remember that final driving exam? Holy cow. You got to parallel park. And if you hit the curb, guess what you get to do? Restart. Another day. You have to schedule it again. You have to do it all over again. And it's crazy because for months, if you were like me, your instructor was super cool. Fantastic dude. You used to stop at the gas station and he used to let you get a drink and it was super cool. It was like this fun little thing, but then the moment you take the driving exam, it's like he's a whole different human. Holy cow. It's like he's never known me. It's like I'm a random dude to this guy. It's intimidating. How many of you guys remember that? How many of you guys remember the nerves that came with that? Dude, oh my goodness, we have some pretty fantastic drivers in here. Thank you. Thank you. Chad raised his hand. He understands. But here's the thing. Like I said, I want to be honest with you guys. And here's the deal. I think that this next part is really pertinent to what we're going to talk about tonight. Okay, all of those things are super important and they're super good. It's the game, it's the big game, it's the grades, it's the driving exam, okay? But how many of you guys, can you please be honest? How many of you guys have been in a big situation that was not expected? How many of you guys have found yourself receiving news that you never thought you would receive? It's the news that you always hoped you would never hear. How many of us in the room have had their parents come in and sit down with them and you get hit with the phrase, "It's just not going to work out. We can't make it happen." Maybe for others of us, you've seen this happen to people that you care for. Maybe for some of us, we found ourselves in a situation where mom or dad or grandparents or aunts or uncles or brothers and sisters receive news that they could have never expected. And we have to just watch it. The only thing we can do is tell them that we care for them and we love them and we're there for them. And man, that feels so worthless in the moment. How many of you guys have been there? Even worse, how many of you guys have gotten the news that somebody you cared for, whether it's friends or family or somebody you knew or a community you cared for, you loved, that person is gone? Every single one of us, I believe, truly deep down has experienced something that is like this. And I want to pause this real quick, okay? I want to pause this. Not the stream, keep the stream going. You need to hear this, okay? I'm sorry if that brings up emotions that hurt and they sting. But you need to understand this. You have a church, and you have coaches, and you have volunteers, and you have friends that love you, and they care for you, and they're here for you. Don't miss that. I don't care if I've never met you before. I love you and I care for you. Don't miss that. Okay, I'm sorry if that brought emotions up. If you're like me and you're trying to hold back tears on stage, I'm sorry if that did that. But I think that the crazy thing is, and this is something I don't want you to miss about this prayer, it's this. Christ knew what was coming. Plain and simple, Christ knew what was coming. So as Christ goes to pray, as he brings his disciples to this garden, as he pulls a couple of them along with him, and he says, wait here while I go and pray, Christ knows exactly what this will look like. Christ knows that his own disciple will betray him. Christ knows that he will be drug off, that he will be brought to a false trial, that he will be accused of a false thing. Christ knows that he will be beaten almost to the point of death, that his skin will be ripped off of his back. Christ knows that he will be drug out and humiliated and spat on and punched and hit in front of hundreds, if not thousands of people. Christ knows that he will be pinned on a cross. Christ knows that every breath on that cross will be agonizing and painful, and Christ knows that he will draw every single breath for people that not only put him there, but people who put him there who do not care that they did. Christ knows that as he goes and as he sits down to pray. And my question for you is this: if you could put yourselves in the shoes, maybe the sandals of Christ, how would you handle it? You know you are going to die, and I'm not talking about how every single one of us in here will die, obviously. I'm talking about you know that you will die the most brutal death for something that you did not do. What do you do in that moment? How do you handle it? How do you go about it? You are going to die for people who don't care about you. Quite frankly, people who hate you. What do you do about it? This is why I love this prayer. I think this prayer is so incredibly important. Because Christ, in response to knowing every single detail that I just shared with you, offers up this prayer. Look to verse 35. He says this: he went on a little further and fell to the ground. He prayed that if it were possible, the awful hour awaiting him might pass by him. Here is Christ's prayer. Abba, Father, he cried out. Everything is possible for you. Please take this cup of suffering away from me. Yet I want your will to be done, not mine. I think whether we know it or not, that first half of that prayer, every single one of us has probably uttered at some time. Okay, I can give you a couple fun examples of this. When I was in college, we would have tests in a certain class every single Friday, and we would have quizzes every single Wednesday, okay, because you had to prove what you knew. It was detrimental to go. It's like math, okay? You can't do algebra if you don't know what 2 + 2 is, okay? And so every single Wednesday and every single Friday, we would walk into class, and I can promise you that every single Wednesday and every single Friday, I was sending up the prayer, Lord, God, if you can change this, and I know you can, let it be done. God, I have not looked at my textbook one time. I've been up at 3 a.m., and I have no idea what I'm doing. Lord, please let us walk in there, and please let the professor look at us and say, hey, class, I'm just joking. I'm just kidding. We're not taking a test today. Everybody have some ice cream and go on your way. That was my prayer. God, if you can change this, please do it. I think every single one of us has made a prayer like that. I worked at a coffee shop for 2 years while I was in college. Okay, I was a barista, and I would like to say I was pretty good at my latte art. Thank you very much. Now you know that. Will I do it for you? No. So I was a barista, and there were many mornings, but there was this one really special morning that I probably prayed the most. It's called Sunday morning. Okay, it was the busiest day of the week, and it was the time that the most people would come in, and it was the time that every single person was ordering like 3 drinks. And so you would sit behind there, and you would be slammed the whole entire time. And I would lift up to God, and I would say, God, if you could just do one thing for me, if you could just do one thing for me, please let the people understand who are upset with me, who are mad with me because I made their drink correctly. It's just 3 degrees colder than what they wanted it. Please let that person who's going to go climb in their car and drive to church, please let them feel a little conviction this morning. Please. Hey, God, if you could not have me scheduled on a Sunday, please let it be done. How many of us in this room have prayed a prayer that says, God, if you can change this, I know you can change this, change it. Awesome. I asked you guys to be honest, and I'm going to be honest with you guys, because I'm never going to ask you for something that I would not also do. I'm never going to challenge you in some way that I'm also not trying to challenge myself. So here's the deal. When I was 11 or 12, and we had just been told that my mother was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer, okay, I prayed this prayer over and over and over again. Hey, God, if there was any way that my mom couldn't have pain, let it happen. Hey, God, if there's any way that I could wake up tomorrow and still be 11 years old, the day before we found this out, and it was all a joke, let it happen. Hey, God, if there was any way that you could let my mother's hair grow back or her wig make her feel like it's convincing, can you let it happen? I want to be honest with you guys. I prayed that prayer all the time, daily, from the moment I woke up to the time I went to bed. God, I know you can change this. So if you would, please do it. Let it be a nightmare. Let it be a horrible dream. Lord, I know it's been 10 years, but let me wake up and it be as if I am still 11 years old. I hate if you've had to pray that prayer too. And I'm sorry if you have. But here's the craziest part about this story. I say story, it's real. I don't mean it in that way. Here's the craziest part about this. Christ goes on at the end of his message, and at the end of his prayer, he says this: "Yet I want your will to be done, not mine." Jesus is on his knees, praying so intensely that he compares it to as if he was going to die. And at the end of his prayer, he lifts up, "But God, if it's not your will, let your will be done." Jesus prays, "Lord, if there's any other way for this to happen, let it happen that way. Can you please do that? But if there is not a way in which it accords with your will, then let your will be done." Last week, we talked about the Lord's Prayer, and there's a phrase in that prayer. It goes something like this: "Let your kingdom come and let your will be done on earth as it is in heaven." You know the coolest part about Jesus? He practices what he preaches. In this moment, Jesus is lifting up and giving us the greatest example of what it means to pray, Lord, let your kingdom come and let your will be done on earth as it is in heaven, not mine. But here's the crazy thing about Jesus. Jesus' will always matched the Father's. As Jesus went and he preached and he taught and as he performed miracles and as he called his disciples, he did all of that in accordance to what the Father asked him to do. But I don't know about you. You may be like me, but I am not Jesus. If you're surprised, I'm sorry. Don't compare me to Jesus, please and thank you. I'm not Jesus. And there have been plenty of times in my life that I have heard the will of the Father, and you know what I've said? I have hit him with a resounding no. We're being honest again. How many of us in this room have found ourselves in a moment where we know we're being called to do something and we don't? If you're not raising your hand, you're probably lying. I'm looking at you, Loogootee campus. Some of you. I love you all. How many of us in this room knew that we were supposed to do something and we didn't? Maybe it's something like this. I don't know, you're going about your day and man, you know you need to talk to that somebody. Maybe you've never even talked to him before. You know you're supposed to talk to this individual and yet, man, you only have 5 minutes to get to your car. You're trying to grab your bag from your locker and you're trying to get out the door. How many of you guys have been in that situation? You're not stopping. I've been there quite a few times. Maybe this one will hit a little more closer to home. How many of us have found ourselves in an argument with our friends or with our parents, and you know you're wrong? You know you're wrong. I know I'm wrong. And yet, man, we have to win that argument. And when you get done, it is burning in your soul that you need to say sorry or you need to go admit it. But man, it is way too embarrassing to admit that you're wrong. How many of us have been in that situation? Maybe it's something along the lines of, you have a friend, and man, we let something that is so minuscule drive a wedge that is so large between us to where you hope that friend's not here tonight, and you hope that friend's not at school. You hope you don't have to bump into him. You're not calling him a friend. I'm just calling him a friend because that's what you used to be. And yet you know that the problem was so small, but if you apologize, then you're admitting you're wrong. How many of us have let that ruin our own friendships? Boys, if you're not raising your hand, you're still lying. Every single one of us in this room has been called to something, and yet we have hit God with, no, I don't think I will. I love it. In 1 Thessalonians 5:17, Paul writes this. It's super, super important, and I would advise you, you can put this on your Instagram, you can put this on your, TikTok. You can replace this with your Philippians 4:13. Paul says this, super powerful. Never stop praying. Done. There it is. Straight to the point. Paul's not taking time to beat around the bush. No, he wants to be honest. Never stop praying. Pray without ceasing. Guys, my challenge for you in this message is pretty straight and it's pretty simple. It's really short. It's this. Ask for what you want, but seek what God wants. It is totally fine, and it's actually encouraged by God himself for you to ask for what you want, not just what you need. You can go to your Father and you can ask God for anything that you want, absolutely. But here is my challenge to you. As you sit there and you pray for the new car, or to make a little more money, or a couple extra hours, or maybe it's a couple less hours, or the new clothes, or the new shoes, or the gifts that you really hope you get for Christmas or your birthday, or for better friends, or for your friends to recognize you, or for people to look at you and go, wow, that dude's pretty cool, or for you to be the best basketball player or the best sports player that there's ever been, or for you to have a really good game, or for you to not miss that block, or for you to be the coach's favorite, or for you to be the best fan that there's ever been, or for you to cheer your friends on, or for you to go home and have a better meal than what you normally have, or for your relationship to be better with your friends or your family, whatever it may be, as you pray for all of the things that you want, which is totally fine, I ask of you to add this to the end of your prayer. It's really simple, but it's this. But your will be done and not mine. But your will be done, not mine. I don't know what this looks like here in this area. Okay, keep in mind. Don't get mad at me. This week is boys basketball sectionals. Okay, so as we go to the game, or as for some of us prepare to play the game, or whatever it is, whoever's moved on to the next tournament, whoever's moved on to the next game, whatever it looks like, if you're just a fan in the stands, as you're sitting there and you're praying that you can have the best game of your life, that you can go out there and you can be the best coachable player out there, that you're praying that you can cheer your team on the best that there's ever been. As you're going out and you're praying all of those things, what happens when we tag on to the end? But your will be done and not mine. Your will be done and not mine. Seniors in the room, every single one of you is gearing up for the next phase in life. Every single one of you has aspirations for whether it's a college that you want to go to, or it's a job you want to get, or it's the military that you're seeking out, whatever it is. In all of those moments, as you're sitting there and you're praying and saying, God, please let me get into the school that I want to go to, and please let me stay in the dorm that I want to be in, and please let me get the stipend that I'm asking for, and please let me have all the scholarships that I've requested, and Lord, please let me have the support that I need, and all of those things as you're lifting up all of those prayers. What happens when we tag on to the end? But Lord, your will be done and not mine. I asked you to be honest, and I'll be honest again for the final time. My prayer for this week, looking forward, is in my eyes a pretty simple one. Okay, I am praying, and I have been for many months now, that at the end of this month, my wife and I welcome in a beautiful and healthy baby girl. That's my prayer. My prayer this week will be that she's healthy, that the doctors and the nurses, that they have everything that they need, that they're having their best day when we walk in there. I'm praying that my wife remains strong and brave like she has all the way up until that point. I'm praying that as my daughter grows up, that she knows that she has two parents that will always love her, no matter what she does, no matter where she finds herself in life, no matter what she believes. My prayer is that my wife and I can be the parents for her that my parents have been and her parents have been for us. I pray with everything inside of me that my daughter never knows what it's like to be hungry, to be in need. But deep down, I pray that in every moment of her life, she will walk humbly with the Lord. And I pray that my wife and I get to see as much of her life as we possibly can I want to see it all. I pray that my daughter knows that even in the 8 months that we've had her, I have loved every single moment with her, and I've never talked to her. I talk to her, she doesn't respond. I put my hand on my wife's belly, and she goes silent. I pray that my daughter knows the Lord and that her faith makes my faith look so small. I pray that when people think of Janessa and I, when we're long and gone, that they think of my daughter and all the things that she's done. I told you I'm never going to challenge you to something that I will not challenge myself to. So here's my deal to you. As you guys go out and as you pray, hopefully you are. And as you tack on, but the Lord's will be done and not mine. That every single time I sit down to pray for my wife and for my daughter, that at the end of that prayer, I will tack on, Lord, let it be your will and not mine. Lord, let it be your will and not mine. It's a simple challenge, but I'm excited because if you can take it seriously, I'm excited to see even in a week the way that your eyes have been opened, the way that your ears can hear, and the way that your lives have changed. Let it be His will and not ours. Let's pray. Dear Lord, I just thank you for another day here on this earth. Lord, what a beautiful thing it is. And Lord, I just thank you for being able to come here and hang out with the Jasper students. Lord, I love them. And it's so encouraging to see them here and to hear them worshiping and to hear them praying and to see them with their coaches. Lord, to see the excitement on their coach's face as I get to hang out with them at CIY and camp and all the things in between. Lord, but I pray in every single moment this week and hopefully there on after, Lord, that as we ask you and petition you for all the things that we want, Lord, that we lift up the prayer that your will be done over all of it and not ours. Lord, you are good and you are gracious and you are merciful and you loved us to the point of sending your Son for us. And so, Lord, I pray that whatever it is that we do in life, whether that is, a minute from now or it's years from now, Lord, I pray that we do it for the ministry that you've called us to. Lord, let it be your will that's done and not mine. It's in your Son's name. Amen.